Joining us now in studio, part of our weekly basketball coverage is the PCC. No, not the Polynesian Cultural Center. President Coach Cleveland.
He wields fiery takes.
Good to have you in studio, Coach. Let's start with the Twitter question. What impressed you the most last night about BYU's win over Utah State?
I think coming out of their practices, they were looking for effort, the coaching staff. I don't think defensively they were perfect last night, but I think what happened is that their mindset, and that was their mindset was, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to play hard. I think some things offensively, too. We saw time and score being a really important thing late in that game. We saw them taking their time. We saw inside out when they weren't knocking threes down. Those are all things, as you mentioned, that you can travel with. And we saw evidence of that last night. We knew we would see evidence of a better effort after Saturday. And it, you know, one of the things, a little bit of a false sense of success. Utah State sent all 5 players back in transition. I don't know if you noticed that last night, but there weren't going to be any transition baskets. And so that led itself a little bit to giving up so many offensive rebounds. But that segment that you showed where they got 4 in a row, I watched that segment just a moment ago. Watching the Utah State 4 of them stood there in the paint, underneath the basket, and watch 4 balls go out. So aggressive play by BYU, having that right mindset made a big difference. It was a difference in the game, but Utah State wasn't very good in the rebounding department last night. I'm sure their coaching staff is not real pleased watching that film.
Tim Duryea was pleading, rebound the basketball.
And, Coach, sometimes your team just has to be scared into action, right? Utah Valley, that shocked and woke BYU up to say, okay, we've got to shake it up. And it's a bad loss for BYU. But maybe it was a good thing in the long run.
It's a punch to the gut.
Yeah.
And we know what that feels like. That's what it felt like for them when they walked into that locker room. That loss will make them better. I know we can look at all the NC2A implications. Forget about all that, okay? I think we're way ahead of ourselves. Let's watch this team evolve and grow. How do they respond to a really difficult, embarrassing defeat, giving up really 206 points in the previous 2 games? That's not going to happen. That coaching staff's not going to tolerate that. And I think more importantly, those players were accountable to one another for the first time. And it's one thing for me to coach you and say, hey, you got to play harder, but it's LJ saying, hey, Nick, you got to get after this thing. Or TJ, they got to get into each other.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that Travis Hansen, Terrell Day, some of the young players when they started, that was one of the things that made those teams special is you had players that held each other accountable.
Did the Cougars discover a new form of winning last night? I mean, do you anticipate that they will win more games like they won last night?
On the road, absolutely, especially when you're not shooting the ball well. So you've mentioned it earlier already. You got to defend. I think there's still a soft seam in the middle of that floor. People are getting to the middle, and when you get to the middle of the floor, you have options to kick it out. You have options to drop it off the bigs. That's something they have to shore up. But what I did like is when they got beat, they didn't stop. They were more, that aggression level was there. I think, yes, that's how you do win. I mean, that's how you win championships. Now, the game has changed in the last 10 or 15 years. Pace is important. Possessions is important. But in meaningful times in the game, when games are on the line, you got to get a stop or you got to get a rebound or you have to make a free throw. That's the difference between winning and losing on the road. That's the difference between winning championships. You're not going to see any 110 to 109 games against Gonzaga or against St. Mary's to win a WCC championship. It's going to be grinded out, possession by possession. And I think one of the things that I loved about the coaching staff last night, watching the game on TV is so much better because I can sit in my couch and just take notes.
Amazing sideline reports as well.
Exactly. BYU scored 10 points on out-of-bounds plays and coming out of timeouts, which says a lot about the coaching staff, their preparation. I mean, they didn't just make those things up. Those little things like that are where you win close games. And this wasn't really a close game, except Utah State had many, many opportunities to cut that to 2 or 4 and just kind of shot themselves in the foot, to be honest with you, in terms of how they rebounded the basketball.
I knew BYU was going to bring it, especially in the half-court sets, because I saw Terry Nash's shoes before the game. They were amazing. I even asked him what kind they were. I'm probably going to get them for Christmas. So he brought it last night. That was the first indicator. Kyle Davis didn't play in this game. He's got a banged-up knee from the Utah Valley game. Dave Rose said he's 50-50 for playing at USC. If he can't play, you got to start Yoli Childs again. What does this mean for Yoli Childs, Braden Shaw on the team?
Well, I think people step up. And I think it changes everybody's mindset. I'm sitting there thinking, I couldn't have been more impressed with the Braden Shaw who plays so few minutes, all of a sudden scores 8 points. I mean, BYU's behind at half if Braden Shaw doesn't play last night. Those 4 offensive rebounds for baskets. But I think everybody's mindset changes, and they step up. Yoli Childs is an athlete. He's aggressive. He rebounds to the ball, quick jumper, but he's going to make mistakes. And so if Kyle Davis is not there, the more he plays, the quicker he's going to get better and become more solid. Braden Shaw, Ace has actually been solid in a couple of games. He can score in the low post. He's a little bit limited in his lift and rebounding, but he's smart enough to know what to do around the basket. That'll be a loss from leadership point of view, and certainly, you know, his contributions here the last 2 years. But this is opportunities for other people to step up. The other thing, that there are going to be some teams they need to go small. And when they can go small, they can play 4 guards. Most coaches love to go small when they can. You both mentioned something about how BYU has played the last 5 or 6 years. I can also remember coaching with Coach Rose when we played a lot of inside out because we had bigs. And I think that shooting woes will be resolved as they learn how to shoot out of that system rather than just in transition and
off the dribble.
Off the dribble.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about BYU's three-point shooting right now? Like, where is your level of concern in all of this?
Well, as a coach, you always knew that three-point shooting would be a difference maker in terms of making runs or extending leads. But I don't think so. In fact, if anything right now, it's forcing them to play a style of basketball that's going to help them in January and February. TJ Haas is a really good shooter, all right? He's also making a transition. You know, expectations are all over the place,
so high
for this team. And I mentioned this earlier to you all. I mean, we need to stop flying the Final Four banner, okay? And let's get back. Let's get back to this team needs to grow and learn and develop. And some of the expectations and things I hear from great fans, Cougar Nation, just great people, they don't apply right now, okay? They just don't apply. And TJ Haas is an outstanding player. Nick Emery is an outstanding player. They can shoot the basketball. They're going to go through it, especially TJ. I remember coming back after a mission and playing very soon, and it is really difficult to get your confidence back. But what happens when they score and win without their contribution shooting threes, it relaxes them. And I think TJ needs to learn how to shoot on an inside-out pass rather than trying to always do it off the dribble. Just let the game come to you. It'll come to you. Look at the 2 threes that LJ made.
Wide open.
Feet squared, inside, out, 3 seconds to think about it. Boom, perfect form, knocked him down. TJ can do that as well.
Are you a lefty, coach?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
How did you play? How did you shoot the ball as a player?
You know what? They didn't give us threes. I'm so old. Hey,
mid-range game.
I averaged about 18, 19 a game in college. I could have been 30. You could have been
30
30 for threes.
It would have been 30 for President Coach Cleveland with a three-point line.
Yeah. Hey, Saturday is a big game. USC is a top 50 team right now. They're 9 in Lenardi's bracketology. I know it's early, but this is a big game for the Cougars Saturday. What do you expect at Staples Center?
I think I'm glad it's at a neutral site.
Well, down the street from campus.
But it's still, they don't practice there every day.
It's a neutral court.
Andy Enfield, we all know where he gained great fame. Florida Gulf Coast gets to the NCAA tournament in their 2nd year as a program. And the next thing you know, he's at USC. They love to push the ball. They're up there athletic. They lost Boatwright, a post player that's started from the 2 years. So Boatwright and maybe Kyle Davis, that'll kind of equal out itself in terms of losses to both programs. But this is an athletic team. I don't think they're as disciplined in terms of blocking out, in terms of doing the fundamental things, but you cannot let them get to the middle of the floor. They're going to have to contain. I could see BYU playing some 2-3 zone. They're not a great three-point shoot team. They've got a few that can shoot it, but I think we're going to pack it in, make them shoot threes, and then the same mentality about rebounding the ball, because this is a team that's how they score, 2nd and 3rd shots.
Do you think that the loss, and I want to rewind a little bit to the loss to Utah Valley, you say that it's going to help this team And so I'm going to put it back on you. How specifically will it help BYU in January and February when they're in a tough game against a team like Portland or Pacific or San Francisco, a team on paper they're supposed to beat, but things just aren't going their way? How does a loss like that really help them in those scenarios?
When the direction and leadership comes from the players and not the coaches on the floor. And it's the silent things, the talking to each other, and get the ball in. I remember having really good bigs, and they demanded that, give me the ball. It wasn't about me shooting the ball. Get the ball here so we can be better. And so I think these experiences, that's why I believe that the loss at UVU may have been the best thing that could have happened to this team. It's painful. It hurt. And
it felt like a funeral almost.
And let's not take away from Mark Pope's team and his preparation and their execution. And they were fighters. They had that mentality, that mindset that BYU needs to have consistently. But I think it's going to be a real valuable tool that they can look back on and say, okay, we can't go back there anymore. Well, this is who we are, and let's define, who are we? Who are we? We've always kind of been defined, as you mentioned earlier, about, well, we got pace, we got possessions, we're going to shoot it early. You know what? You can't always play that way. You got to be able to do that when it's there, but if not, let's go back to fundamental basketball where we pound it, rebound it, and defend it.
Adapt or die.
It's always entertaining to be educated by Steve Cleveland,
President.
Coach. Yeah, by President Coach Cleveland.
I'm pretty sure I'm not the president anymore.
You're the president of the analysis.
Studio B.
There we go. Good to be with you both.
Studio B. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.